welcome to the Merri-Cast, the show that puts you on the fast track to business confidence. Well, full disclosure here, Simon Shepard, CEO of Optimal Life, is a good friend of mine. He's a physiotherapist by training who has turned into a fantastic entrepreneur. There's lots of other subplots to his career and life besides that. For example, Simon turned his passion for cricket into something much more. He rose from being a physiotherapist at Middlesex Cricket Club to being their Director of Organisational Development. And now he's in the middle of an exciting new venture, which he'll tell you all about in this interview. Simon's done lots of things in his life, and he's also a great storyteller, as you'll hear. He talks about a chance meeting, a job ad here, a phone call there. What shines through, though, in his response to every one of these adventures is his insatiable curiosity to progress and basically have a go. So let's go back to the start.
Well, thanks, Trevor. I'm a physiotherapist by background. I trained at St Mary's Hospital. I qualified in 1988, which seems an awful long time ago. And I was plodding along doing a fairly standard rotational job that one does when one first gets into a profession. And then one day, a friend telephoned me, not on a mobile phone, but one of those old-fashioned things that you pick up, and said, "There's a job that's been advertised in a newspaper. You should take a look at it." And I took a look at it, and it was the job as a physiotherapist at Lord's Cricket Ground. Now, I'd only been qualified a year and a half. I love cricket. And I thought, well, a letter back saying no will be framed above my mantelpiece. So I wrote a letter, because you wrote letters in those days. I didn't fill an online application form in or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, I got a telephone call saying, could you come in for an interview? And I went in for an interview, got my best bib and tucker on. And the next day I got rung up again and they said, we'd like to offer you the job. So that was a pretty pivotal moment for me. And it was a really important lesson on what is possible if you have a go, because the easy option would have been, do you know what? I'm nowhere near ready for this. But I had a go.
What made you do that, though? I mean, did you sort of were you of the have a go mentality at that stage, or was it just a sort of, oh well, I might as well try, but my expectations are very low?
For me, there was nothing to lose, and I think that's just a mentality thing. Now, there are things in life where there is things to lose, but with this, there was nothing to lose. What was the worst scenario? Someone writing back saying no on some really nice headed paper as well. And it would have been framed in my downstairs loo, but there we go.
Okay. I mean, so the obvious question that we always ask is, so what happened next?
Well, I got appointed and I turned up, and this was way before sports science became a commonplace. And it was me. And I had the telephone number of a doctor who would provide support, but I turned up, and my first day at work was going on a pre-season tour. And I remember ringing the secretary of Middlesex Cricket Club up the week before, and I said, "Look, I've just been appointed as the new physiotherapist. Is there anything I need to know, or do I need to bring anything?" And chap Joe Hardstaff, who was very, 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 very decent, nice man, he just said to me, he said, I think it's anything you really need to know, Simon, just to make sure you bring your golf clubs with you. And that's how it started. And then we got into the serious realms of cricket. And I was very lucky to have an experienced coach and an experienced captain who gave me a lot of advice and also gave me an awful lot of support and showed an awful lot of trust. You know, my job was to make decisions, and they were very happy that even with my limited experience, I was probably in a better place to make a decision than they were. So they did show incredible trust, and that was possibly another really useful lesson for me.
Okay, so you were there for a while, and then was there a moment where your work, like for example, without stereotyping, on the treatment table, suddenly developed into something a bit wider, something a bit more entrepreneurial?
Well, actually, it probably only took 2 years for that to happen, Trevor. So obviously very busy in the summer, and then in the winter, you're twiddling your thumbs a little bit. And again, I saw another advertisement in our trade mag saying that there was a physiotherapy practice for sale in Temple in London. And I thought, well, why don't we have a go at that? And I went down and had a look, and I thought, well, this is really interesting, and it's an interesting area. And I purchased this single practitioner practice, moved it up the road to something that was slightly more suitable for medical practice. and then grew that from a one-person business, slowly, but over a sort of a 10 to 15 year period, we built that to close to 50 employees. So again, that was my next step. But at the same time, I still kept doing the cricket, and I still kept my my hands in with the sporting work.
Okay, so from 1 to 50 is quite a jump, if you like. I mean, did you feel equipped? Did you ask yourself, where's the manual, about how to do that? Or did you just think, in the spirit of have a go, well, I don't have a manual, but I'm just going to learn.
Well, it was gradual growth. It wasn't one day and then 50 the next. It was 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16, etc. And there were some defining moments in that. So we started off in Chancery Lane and we gradually built that, and we ended up with 3, 4 treatment rooms in Chancery Lane. And then I got another phone call. It was from a director of a local private hospital. And they said, we've just, I'll summarize the conversation, but they effectively said, we've built a new physiotherapy unit and we're not 100% sure how to make it run as effectively and efficiently as we should. Could we have a chat? Because your name keeps cropping up with the consultants who work here. So I went along and had a look, and this physio practice that they built, this physio suite, was incredible. Beautiful gymnasium, treatment rooms, private rooms, etc. And I looked and I went, wow, this is a real opportunity. And this was after I'd been at Lord's for about 9, 10 years. And I was looking for another challenge. And so I went, well, yeah, let's give it a go. And I went and we created a partnership agreement. So it was one of those interesting agreements that relies on that you're aiming for a win-win. So if the practice did well, I did well, and they did well. I guess that was another really important defining moment, because that then did take us up into the realms of the sort of close to 50 employees.
Okay. And then was Optima Life the business that you founded sort of shortly after that, or was that all part of an evolution from that?
Well, that's another bit of evolution. So we were building a nice physio business. That started the one man band started in about 1993, and then in about 2002, the hospital came along, and then it was interesting. We paid for some research to be done into stress. And the reason we had some research done as a business was that stress overtook musculoskeletal pain as the biggest cause of absence from work. And now I was running these physio businesses, and I was thinking, hold on. I've made my living out of musculoskeletal pain. What's this stress thing that's coming up? And it was an interesting document that came back, and it's one of the few that I read all the way to the end. And I'm glad I did, because in the last paragraph, there was just a little throwaway comment about a Finnish technology called Firstbeat, that is effectively was one of the first, what I'm going to call wearables, that gave people information about their physiological responses. And I looked at it and I just went, wow, if that does what it says on the tin, I can do my job better. And that's when Optima Life was founded, because we saw that there was an opportunity to bring the technology into the UK and hopefully spread the word and spread the usage.
Okay, so we're at this point where there have been several sort of evolutions, if you like, in your thinking and so on. Are you somebody who gets sort of bored quite easily? If you've got something that you're doing and that you've maybe mastered something, or you feel you're mastered, does your mind wander and you start to think, what next, what next, what next?
I'm not sure it's boredom, but progress is one of my 3 key values as a person. So I'm always trying to think what could be done, what can be done, where's this heading towards. So I think I'm probably driven by the word progress as opposed to responding to a position of boredom.
Okay, and all right then. So using the word progress, there were kind of clear lines where there sort of you could actually see, yes, this will help me progress in a direction. So was there a big plan there about where you wanted to progress to?
I have to be honest and probably say no.
Okay.
Probably no. I always like to solve problems. And so if there's a problem there to be solved, I will look to get involved in that. But I wouldn't say I had a master plan of growing a business from 1 to 50 people, which is a big business for a physio business. I wouldn't say I was going to look at biomedical technology and think about how that could be used in stress. And the last year or so, I've suddenly got involved in brain health. I wasn't looking for it. It's sort of an opportunity was there, and wow, that's really interesting.
What do you then, in terms of attributing the success of your business, Optimum Life? What we see what inspired you to start it in the first place, but how did you keep on progressing the development and evolution of Optimal Life itself?
Yeah, I guess the first thing that strikes me was failure. So if I go back so we sort of saw this technology in Finland, thought it would be great to bring over to the UK, thought it would be a simple matter of bringing technology in and selling it for other people to use, because surely everyone else in the world thinks exactly the same way as I do. Oh, how wrong I was. How very wrong I was. So one of the first things I think we had to be was very agile in our thinking. And we realized that we had to educate the market and we had to almost demonstrate the proof of concept. So we integrated the technology into education programs around resilience and leadership. We even did well-being way back in 2010, way before it became sort of a mainstream. So I think agility was really, really important, and that was something that definitely fueled the growth. And then the second thing that fueled the growth would have been the response you get from people. If you're talking, and we get very personal when we coach people with with their physiological data in front of them, with their story in front of them, you can go to some interesting places really, really quickly. And I found that that was a very privileged position to be in, and I enjoyed it because you enjoyed helping other people solve their own problems. I didn't solve them for them, but you helped guide them on the road, which allowed them to solve them for themselves.
That's really interesting because, a lot of people who are dealing with technology often struggle to explain the technology or be sort of personable about how that relates to the human affairs and so on. So you felt you like had a foot in both camps, perhaps. Actually, you kind of you knew about the technology, but you could relate it to the real world and perhaps explain it in ways that people could understand, maybe.
I hope so. And again, go back to my life as a physiotherapist, if you think about it, I had maybe 15 people getting undressed in front of me every day, telling me about their life. And they might come in and see me for a bad back or a bad neck. But a lot of people came and the challenge wasn't their back or their neck. The challenge was what was going on in their life. And I was often used to saying, people tell you about their back for 20 seconds, and they tell you about their lives for 20 minutes.
Mm.
So as a physio, what do I really need to help them with? Yes, they're back because that's what they came for, but gee, you can do so much more.
Okay, and so that's very interesting. So you became a sort of through sort of having people on your treatment table, as you said,
Yeah.
undressing in front of you, you became almost like a psychologist in a way that you were helping to understand, the interaction of the physical and the mental.
You certainly had to understand people. And again, going back to the cricket, as the physio, you sat in a cricket dressing room for years and years, and you saw some very successful teams, and I also saw some pretty unsuccessful teams as well. And that was an interesting thing to reflect on. What made those teams that were successful really tick, and what was going on when things weren't going well.
Did it inform your view then of how, if you're taking, experience from the sporting field and teams and good and bad teams and good and bad team spirit back into the business? Were you able to identify and diagnose, potential issues or challenges within your own business as your team grew?
Yeah, sometimes it's harder to look in the mirror yourself, isn't it? But yes, I think it did help in some ways. It did help in some ways, and there are always times when things are not running as smoothly as you'd like them to, and you do then draw back on what you've learned and your knowledge and think, right, how can we solve this problem? So yes, undoubtedly, yes, it would have done.
Okay, so concentrating on Optimal Life then. It's 16 years since you began Optimal Life. I'm interested in if you could paint us a picture of how that business has unfolded. From how you conceived it originally to how you conceived it as being to what you see it as now. You in terms of the wandering path, if you like, of its development. Just to give the listeners some context on that.
I think what's interesting here, Trevor, is a lot of the core stuff within the business. Once we'd flipped from being a tech, what I would say is a buy tech, sell tech company to actually a service company, we go in and do the work with clients. The core to the business has been the same. We try and focus on what I would call the human and humane side of performance. We look at data. We look at using that data to understand. We use conversations and activities to inspire. And then we also think about how can we provide a continuing conversation and nurture the learning. What has been interesting though in the change is what I call the wrapping paper. So back in 2010, 12, whenever it was, stress was becoming a really interesting word. So stress was the wrapping paper for the content. We then started to move into the world of well-being. We then started to move into resilience. Some organizations now are very much around performance, leadership, balance. So funnily enough, I actually don't feel the content has changed massively, but I do feel the wrapping paper and the way things are presented has had to adapt, yeah, according to what the market is interested in at that particular moment.
Nevertheless, though, I suppose the technology is helping you to reach into some parts of the way you can help people, even if the values that are underpinning it, are the same as when you started.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the technology does change a bit. Mobile phones have advanced, which means we can now integrate what was a fairly rudimentary technology back in 2008 into something that's now I can check my own data on my phone whenever I want to. So yeah, there definitely been advances in the technology that has helped. But fundamentally, the technology is there as an assister. It's not there as a dominant force.
Are you? I mean, I've personally experienced. I should tell the listeners here that I've had most of because I know you sort of my local life, here in St Albans. There have been occasions where I've known that you've gone and attached various items or implements to people in terms of measuring the things like their heartbeat and so on in the course of sort of doing experiments and getting live data and so it seems to me that you're just constantly wanting to track and evolve your understanding of the human side, the human physiology and condition and what this means in terms of the evolution. I mean, are you a sort of inveterate experimenter, if you like?
I like experimenting, but I think it's interesting. I do attach devices to a lot of people. But the primary reason I look to do it is to help tell stories and help the individuals that the devices are attached to understand themselves better. Um, Maybe if I give a quick example, that would help. So
Okay.
what we measure is something called heart rate variability. And I'm not going to go into all the physiology, but we measure it very accurately and we stick things on chests. We don't sort of rely on wristbands or rings or things like that. Now, this was quite an early assessment I did, and it was on a cancer specialist nurse. And the cancer specialist nurse wore the monitor for 3 days. And she was telling me about what went on in those 3 days. She said, yes, I had to do that very, very tough clinic. We have to do it once a week. And I said, that will be the most stressful time of your week, wouldn't it? She said, yes, undoubtedly, that's going to be the most stressful time of my week. And then when we looked at her data, we actually showed that it was one of the most relaxing times of her week. So I tell that story because I think it helps highlight what we're trying to do is unlock people's thinking away from what they expect to what is really going on. And that was a really powerful thing to be able to show this nurse. When you are doing something that is really close to your values, you're really competent at, an environment you're happy, look what happens to you physiologically. You're in a great place. Even though you think it's very stressful and it might feel stressful, you are physiologically in a really, really good place.
Okay, and that's interesting because that was a tale of the unexpected. Because the time when she thought she was most stressed actually was when she was least stressed, and so on. So that kind of informs her own feeling about herself. In
Yeah.
terms of how she then reacts in future situations and so on. Let's get back to the in terms of being an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm one, you're one, but of course it comes with a lot of pressure and tough decisions about how you go about your business. I mean, how have you coped with any particular challenges sort of along the way? I mean, are there particular things that you found tough about what you do?
Yeah, I mean, people are always tough, aren't they? And I speak to a number of people in my position, and we often always sort of nod. And then we've got to recognize that we are people as well. So we're part of the problem. Gee, I think people can be a challenge, but you are a person as well, so you're part of that challenge. I think pace can be a challenge. So if you want to go at a certain pace and others want to go at a different pace, that can be tough. And that could be a client going at a different pace. It could be people within your team going at a different pace. I'm not saying the entrepreneur is always the quick one. The entrepreneur could be the slow one, and everyone else wants to race away. But if there's this sort of incongruency between pace, it's like sort of cogs in an engine getting caught up, isn't it? I think that can be a real challenge. And I've had to sometimes remind myself, have we got the pace right here? Have we got the pace right?
Are you by habit, do you think it's more often the case that you're moving faster than the other person or the other way around?
I think I'm thinking quicker. I'm not always necessarily thinking better. Maybe it shows a certain lack of neurons that I don't use very many, and I should maybe think more widely. I probably got a bit better of that in my older age, but I think as an entrepreneur, you do have to think quick at times, whether that's adapting and being agile, decision making. There are times we've just the pandemic, I'm sure, has been covered lots on these podcasts, but that was chaos, and entrepreneurs needed to act quickly. They couldn't keep just doing their spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet. There was a point when you needed to act, I feel. So,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
is there anything else at all? I mean, like we'll get on to the good stuff you're really good at, of which there is plenty. But there are other things that you found as an entrepreneur so really tough. A lot of people on this podcast say, "Oh, I hated doing the books or paying my taxes or certain things like that." I mean, were there certain things which you just think that's just not anything I'm interested in? I'm going to outsource this, or you put it off, or whatever. I'm just interested in other areas of toughness.
Absolutely. And when I talk to businesses, I sometimes go and coach businesses around these sorts of things, and they're four Ps, which are loosely connected to a model that was developed by Bowman and Deal. And they say that the greatest leaders are the people who can master people. They understand the big picture. They're great with processes, and they're political animals. And if I look at those four Ps, there's one that sticks out enormously that I'm very bad at, and that's process. So if there's something that needs process, I's dotted, T's crossed, outsource.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of heads out the door pretty quickly. Whenever it rears its ugly head. So what you just outsource. So we're talking about things like accounting and invoicing and stuff like that, or wider than that maybe.
Well, anything that requires detail, I know I'm not
Mm,
very good at. Anything that
mm.
requires real attention to detail, I would like someone else to probably take on or certainly give a view to. But yeah, you're right. There's things like legals. Oh, dearie me. I don't have the patience to go through them. Find a
Yeah.
good lawyer.
Yeah, yeah, you and me both on that one. So let's go on to the flip side now. I mean, the thing that you really love about the entrepreneurial life, what is it that kind of has you leaping out of bed in the morning and thinking, yeah, I want to do more of it. What is it about it that makes you want to carry on doing it?
I do keep going back to this. I do like solving problems. Whether it's the crossword puzzle, whether it's the Sudoku, whether it's how on earth we're going to pull a deck together to raise amount of money for the net for some funding, whether it's how we're going to actually deal with Mr. Smith, who's got a real challenge with what's going on in his life, through to Trevor's hurt his knee. There are all sorts of problems that come my way, and I actually just love trying to sort them out. And I don't sort everyone out.
Does the act of solving problems then make you think about, does it help? Is it a sort of self-perpetuating process that you solve people's problems as an entrepreneur, which helps you think about other problems that they may have? Or do they just tell you, actually, you're really good at this. Can you help me solve this other problem? I'm interested in the way that develops into new ideas and new business.
Yeah, I think it's probably the latter. So you talk to people, and you just talk, and people go, God, this is going on, boom, 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 and my mind is almost immediately ticking about, well, what's the solution here? How can this be improved? How can we progress things? Again, it's a rather sad reflection of myself that I'm not emotionally intelligent and wanting to really connect with the person. But I know that this cog is going around saying, "Come on, how can we sort this out? How can we sort this out?"
Have you changed as a person then in this period where you know this is entrepreneurial period where through the process of starting a business, working with people and so on. I mean, have you evolved? A lot of people say, oh, as I get older, I get more mellow, or or I become more experienced or wise, or anything like that. I noticed on your LinkedIn you described yourself as a nuisance, and
Yeah.
and are you still the provocateur, if you like? Are you still the person who's kind of pricking people's consciences about particular issues in your field of expertise? I mean, how have you sort of grown, in the process of businesses growing?
I feel a bit more confident in having the conversations that I probably want to have. Sometimes that is asking the tricky questions. Sometimes it is being that nuisance. But I think if you're going to be the person who's the nuisance or the provocateur, you've got to be able to contribute to the other side, which is the progression. So it isn't just about being a nuisance for being a nuisance sake and being antagonistic. I often describe it's about trying to help people get underneath their own skin and they almost become their own personal irritant, but then you help that person sort it out. And I think
Okay, so
it,
you're yeah, no, please go on.
I was going to say, I think experience means that you've worked with a number of different people in a number of different sectors and in a number of different cultures and a different number of different geographies. And if I also think of my personal life, I've worked in sport, I've worked in health, and I've worked in business. The number of times I sort of bring something from another domain into the problem solving or the conversation, it's every day.
So, and that is part of that problem solving. We're getting back to that again, aren't we? That
Yeah,
all helps in the problem solving compulsion, if you like. I use that word, not you. In terms of like that you've got to there's something there to solve, and so you're restless in doing so.
there is. And I tell you another thing though, Trev, before we maybe move on from this problem solving thing, is another really important thing is to recognize when you can't solve the problem. I always I talk about there being a defining moment in a physiotherapist's career. And that's the moment when you first qualify, you think physiotherapy is going to sort everything out. Okay. You get people coming in and they twist their ankle and you go boom, 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 boom. You'll be out 3 weeks, boom, 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 boom. And then you sort of overhear a conversation with one of your colleagues who's been in the department, who you might have been mentoring or that sort of thing. And all of a sudden they may be looking at an ankle and they go, I haven't got a clue what's wrong with your ankle, but we're going to find out. And that for me is a changing moment in that person's career because they suddenly realize that they've got permission to say, I don't know.
It's okay to say you don't know, and you know, but together at least we'll try our best to do something. Is that, I mean, moving on to lessons, learn as an entrepreneur, is that one of them, and are there others as well?
I think that one's an important one. I think you're learning about people every single day. So that's an ongoing lesson that we're always learning. I think valuing friendships and networks is something that I've become much better at or has been more important to me over the years. We all think we're going to rule the world and conquer everything when we're in our 20s and 30s, maybe, but there's a reality that kicks in at some point that realizes that we're probably going to, if we are going to rule it, we're going to do it with other people.
I mean, I think most people would agree of the importance, as the longer they go on, they realize the importance of networks and so on. Is that an area there where you feel that maybe you didn't harness as much as you could have done then earlier on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I was to go back to the early days of my career and I could change two bits of knowledge or things, I would want to be much better at networking and committed to it. I would want to be much better at marketing because I now understand that things are really, really important.
Okay, that's really interesting. So it kind of moves us smoothly along to, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start their own business? I mean, those presumably talking to your younger self, that would maybe be part of it, but are there other things as well?
I'm a big believer in mentors. They've certainly helped me. I'm a big believer in, if I was advising a youngster, I'd say if you see someone inspires you or you respect and you want to talk to them, do not be shy of going up to them at a meeting or a conference and saying, I'm really sorry, and I'm sure you get this lots, but it'd be great if I could just grab a cup of coffee with you at some point, and you never know what will happen.
So if somebody, just so that we can put our listener, who's maybe starting a business or has started it recently in that position of receiving that. I mean, you presumably have been approached like that yourself, and I have as well. And actually, rather than thinking I've only got sort of 3 minutes for you or something, I actually feel quite flattered, if I'm honest. And I like that, and I like the fact that somebody is valuing my experience. So is that the same emotion for you as well?
Absolutely. And the other thing, in a conversation, both sides should always learn. This is a great opportunity for me to learn as well. So the 20, 30-year-olds that they're part of the market that I work in. So I'm learning about them. This is me being selfish again, I guess. But I just love sitting down and talking about things and helping people get to the places that they want to, and that could just be in their thinking, it could be in their doing.
So what are you up to at the moment, Simon? I mean, is there anything that you're currently doing that you'd like to tell us about? I know you're involved in a new venture at the moment. Perhaps tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've gone from bodies as a physio to hearts with my monitors, and I'm now getting into brains. So again, this was an opportunity that just came through a conversation. An old colleague of mine who's based in Australia rang me up back in October last year and said, "Take a look at this technology, Shep." So I took a look at it, and it was interesting. So we're using virtual reality to understand brain function better. Um, it's early days, but we're finding some really interesting areas, particularly around the world of concussion. That's getting increased. That's an increasing area of interest. But I think we'll also see its usage in dementia, potentially patients who suffer falls. Again, it's very early days, but gee, it's a really interesting journey to be on at the moment.
Okay, so that's an area that you're working in quite an area of growing interest and so on. So this sounds like it's got potential in the area of not just sports then, but also well beyond.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting when we go for medicals, or if you go for a medical, you might have your blood taken, the doctor listens to your heart, they might look at your gut these days and x-ray your lungs and examine the liver and the kidneys. And actually, very little attention is paid to the brain. And yet, it's one of the most important organs. And maybe we need to be more proactive in our brain health in the same way that we encourage people to eat healthy and do some exercise. Maybe we need to have a sort of similar mindset towards the brain.
So many things in that interview about Simon. What's clear though is that this man loves to solve a problem, and he solved a lot of problems by listening to people. Remember what he said about his physiotherapy work? People tell you about their back for 20 seconds and then tell you about their lives for 20 minutes. Simon's journey also hasn't been straightforward, but all the things he has got up to in his working life have had a common denominator, a deep-seated passion for curiosity and progress. And what advice did he give to others? Well, to be more confident in asking questions as a way to help people realize and solve their own challenges, to learn about people every day, and his wish that he'd been better at networking and marketing earlier in his career, and lots of other lessons besides. So thank you to Simon, and thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate and review through your usual podcast provider. And if you want to find out more about the Merri-Cast or our business Merrible Media, you can find us on LinkedIn. Don't forget to join us for our next episode, but until then, thanks for listening.